like to introduce Tanu Priya Uteng, who is from the Institute of Transport Economics at Oslo, Norway, and who's been a long-standing member of INTALInC. Welcome to this presentation on caring cities. Hopefully you can all hear us online. Yeah, and the technology holds us up. Okay, thank you, Tanu.
Thanks, Karen. Good morning, everyone. So I need to sit down so I can be visible on the screen. And with Karen and Tim right in front of me, I'm not nervous. Okay. First of all, I would like to start with thanking Karen and you all. I mean, presenting for INTALiNC is actually, it feels like presenting for friends and family. And it's always a pleasure to come to INTALiNC conferences. What I'm presenting today is actually, I don't think I would have dared to present it anywhere else except this kind of forum. Because it's challenged, and even invoking exclusion and inclusion, it's full of conflict, even in discussions, and being shown the door, literally, in many instances. So yeah, here I am, and I hope that what I'm trying to profess here is taken forward by all of you. Now, I grew up in India, and my medium of education was English since I was 3 years old. We start school at 3. And I find English, especially British English, really fascinating. It gives you these nice words coming together, like strategic ambiguity, you know? And no other English from other parts of the world will give you this, but only British. And this I picked up recently from a British TV series. And I thought, like, this is really a good definition of my profession, of the planning profession. We live in strategic ambiguity. It's strategic because maybe politicians want it this way. They don't want clarity. And there is ambiguity because let's just talk about, how cities have been framed, the entire domain of framing of cities. There's a growing ecosystem of urban models and city paradigms that politicians, planners, policymakers, and researchers use. Some are overlapping, some are branding, and some are genuinely different frameworks which don't talk to each other. Let me give you a very quick recap. From the sustainability and environment focus, we have these kinds of cities. The definition exists, papers exist, work exists, reports exist. Circular city, carbon neutral city, climate resilient, nature-based, sponge, regenerative city. I'm sure I'm missing some terms. Then you have the accessibility and proximity models, 15-minute, 20-minute neighborhood, complete city, walkable, transit-oriented city. Then you have the technology and data-driven, often hyped, sometimes controversial, but very much loved by politicians. And the Indian Smart City program, where the Prime Minister declared we will create 100 smart cities in a country like India, where in a lot of parts of the country, even basic infrastructure is not in place, just goes on to say our fascination with technology and how we are ready to basically give up anything just to sound cool. So here we have Smart City, AI, digital twin platform, then the form and urban structure. This has more historic generation to it. And somehow I feel that they are not really in conversation much with the upcoming tech focus. So we have compact, polycentric, vertical, linear, mega city, mega region. Then the mobility and transport centered, car-free, low-traffic neighborhoods, cycling city, multi-modality, mobility as a service, mass. And then you have the social equity and inclusion approach, which is basically in the research domain. You go and talk to planners in even the most advanced economies like Norway, what is inclusion? They will have a blank look and they will tell you universal design. I'm like, do you think inclusion can be anything more than that? No, not that we are aware of. Okay. And it's, Norwegians are blunt. They are like direct. We are not aware of it. It doesn't exist. Okay. What about, talking about gender, for example? We are an egalitarian society. We are equal. And then you show them the data. And they'll be like, we didn't know about it. I'm like, okay, how? How didn't you know about it? Because they were not interested in looking at it. So, so we have inclusive city, just, caring, child-friendly, age-friendly, gender-sensitive, feminist city. So we have so many kinds of cities. And then we have the governance and economy models on top of it. creative, innovation, entrepreneurial, sharing, common city. Then the hybrid and the emerging concepts. We have playable city, slow city, resilient, adaptive, post-carbon. Now you must be like taking long breaths, like, my God, where are we? What have I been working with? But now let me just give you a quick recap. There are a few overlaps, heavy overlaps, like 15-minute city, compact city, transit-oriented development. Some are branding tools rather than new models. Smart city was a branding tool. It was not a new model, it was nothing. It was pure branding tool. And in the research itself, if you start plotting, there has been shifting priorities. From 2000, you have sustainability, but minus social sustainability. It was first economics and then environment. And now, very recently, social sustainability is coming up. But let me tell you, it hasn't moved beyond the research domain. Planners, politicians, they're not clear about what is social sustainability. Then 2010, we saw this creative, smart cities, resilience approach. And it's only in 2020s, then again, proximity, care, justice, 15-minute cities, urban living labs have been in the vogue. And that also because, for example, in Europe, the European Research Council will tell you, you have to use urban living labs approach, otherwise we are not funding you. So then we run to use urban living labs approach. What does an urban living lab mean? We're not really clear about it. We used to run workshops, now we call it urban living lab. It's the same thing. We're not doing anything different. Or there's a multiplicity of how it's being interpreted. The reason I have picked up caring city per se is because I think at a very macro global level, we need a different kind of branding. Something which can stand up to the entire smart city focus. Because smart city was not caring. It was quite uncaring. It was very exclusive, and it has been proven over the world. Like whatever I'm presenting today, the findings are consistent around the world. And this you have to trust me on. And if you need references, I'll provide it later. So, and I think care approach or the caring city should not be restricted just to how we know it today. For care activities, for the domain of like women and female-oriented care activities. But care as an approach should be embedded in how policies are made, how politicians are questioned. What you did, was it careful or was it careless? And that's a very simple term, a very simple language to understand for everyone. You can question a policy because it was a careless policy. And I think that is how caring city should be taken forward. Just to give you a background, caring city today, the concept in research, in also policy work, a lot of UN policy work especially is looking at caring city. It prioritizes understanding of care work, accessibility and social infrastructure related to care, like elderly care center, children's daycare center. And the policies range from integrated care strategies to neighborhood care systems, including care centers, mutual support networks, and awareness raising. So you have these super blocks in Barcelona. You have a lot of creative endeavors in Bogota, actually a lot of Spanish country. It puts well-being and quality of life at the center. However, it's missing from the politics of planning. And this is a rough, overview. This is from one of the UN reports where they have provided an overview of what is happening. And somehow the Spanish countries have cracked the code of working with caring cities, not the other countries. Of course, yes. Yeah. And of course, it dies out when the government changes. Yeah. So, but, and just to give you a just quick recap of what's happening from UN Women, they are taking this agenda forward in the Global South. So this is a report from Dhaka city. Then there's another one from Nepal. They're basically working with mapping. They're doing layers of mapping, demography, socioeconomic status, location of slums, location of daycare centers, elderly care centers. So it's a sequential mapping approach. And then they try to see accessibility. A very standard, accessibility mapping practice, which is being adopted. It's great. It's not a tough exercise at all, but it's great that UN Women has taken it up and it's percolating down to countries like Nepal and Bangladesh. This is their vision, UN Women's vision of caring city. Investment in inclusive care system, foster public-private partnership, integrate technology, design gender responsive policies, and develop climate resilient care systems responsive policies. Here we see that they're trying to mix the climate agenda and caring agenda, which is great, the environment and the caring. However, one of the challenges remain that care is somehow relegated to women. It's a woman thing, but it's not a woman thing. It's a human society thing. Even simple interventions like not providing footpath for walking is a careless approach. And that is what I'm saying. Caring is not just about caring for your children by a mother. Caring should be embedded in all kinds of decision making. And I am advocating for changing the narrative, not only for research, but for the politics of planning, where we frame research design, analysis, and the politics to both derive from and feed into the caring cities agenda. So it should be made into a political necessity, and the care lens needs to be adopted. Expertise needs to be again built on how to make these care filters, and future of development should be guided from a caring perspective. Now, there can be many ingress to what I'm advocating, many, and I'll present just 2 or 3 of these ingresses. One is, gendered mobility, and I've been working with gendered mobilities for a very long time, so it was relatively easy for me to put this ingress in place. But yesterday I ran a session with Edda on empowering women, and what came out in the discussion is basically findings which were in place 20 years ago. And even today, it's exactly the same. Very little has changed. There are piecemeal approaches, but there's no cohesive or approach to it, or a sort of international or national mandate on it. It's ad hoc. It pops up, it's appreciated, finances run low, it's taken down. That's the approach. Okay, so why gendered mobilities? Whatever I'm presenting here, again, please remember, this is based on findings from around the world. It's applicable around the world, global north, global south, everywhere. Trip purposes for women are different. They have fewer job and business trips, more shopping and escort or care-based trips. Women have more varied and complex activity patterns, which leads to high number of trip chaining. Also, there is a daytime distribution of trips. They go less out by night. Also, women travel less often in rush hour. There's also a gender divide in licensing and car availability. It's higher for men, even in very advanced economies like Norway. Though when you look at the travel behavior data set, 90% of women will have license, but they're not driving. They're car passengers. So availability of car is restricted. More choice, mostly women are passengers, men drive. Women use public transport, walk more often. They are more multimodal. Wherever they are driving smaller cars. And wherever cycling is part of the travel culture, women are cycling longer distances. Shorter trip distances and trip duration is shorter for women, especially for job trips, but also other purposes. They participate less in long distance travel commuting. Now, this is the backdrop. Now, if we had a caring agenda in place, how things would have been done, we would have plotted what kind of daily mobility needs do women have, what are their limitations which they face with respect to time constraints, financial, safety, and security constraints. Can we minimize these constraints? That would have been the policy focus. For example, through spending less time and money on their daily traveling, how to facilitate that approach? Can they use their time differently? What ratio of women are in different employment services like manufacturing, care? Where are they located? And how to provide transport to these places? And the process would have been mapping, plotting, and interlinkages and continuous monitoring. But since we do not have a caring agenda in place, how have things been done? And this won't be a surprise. There is a hegemony of trips planned for peak hour, for commute, for fixed employment, fixed areas, and transport modeling exercises with billions and billions going into sustaining them, building them, are feeding into this kind of narrative. The desired target groups are commuters who have jobs in fixed locations, fixed timing, mostly men, and 9-to-5 jobs. Who are ignored? Flexible trips, trip chaining, traveling with children, linking multiple geographically spread low-end flexible jobs. They are not really in this, discussion or discourse of transport planning. The undesired target groups are women, family with young children, shift part-time workers, older adults. So yeah, there's a long list, but you get the gist. Now, what we find is the biggest issue is public transport, walking and bicycling infrastructure is given inadequate attention and funding. The gender nature of infrastructure is poorly understood. Daily mobilities is not integrated with other development policies like health, employment, education, welfare, and the relationship between gender equality and sustainability is poorly understood or not understood at all. So even when you're really taking forward the climate agenda, there's a strong overlap with gender, but it's not really understood. Also, life stages. Life stages has a strong impact on transport and travel behavior and transport poverty, but this is also not understood well. Now, what has this led to in the global north? Now, I'm particularly talking about global north because the trend in global south is also to adapt to that kind of lifestyle. Karen took me to Uganda once, very grateful for that, and we were shown the vision of the capital city of Uganda, Kampala, and it was basically a blueprint of Manhattan, and it had no linkage with the reality of Kampala whatsoever. And it got me thinking that, okay, in this presentation, if I just show what has happened in global north, that is basically showing the global south, where are we heading if we don't do things right? And the minus sign is, and it's convergence between men and women. And the minus sign is because it's actually negative for the entire sustainability discourse. What we see is while men are still driving more than women, but the gap is decreasing over time for all life cycle stages. Trip purposes are converging, license holding is converging, car availability, mode choice, trip distance, and trip duration, everything is converging. And this is again based on travel behavior survey analysis from around the world. Now, if we want to move forward with care, we could look at transport versus network mobility rather than just transport as a hard infrastructure of providing roads and bridges. It is very much about daily mobilities, and it is a dynamic element. So when you invoke topics like multimodality, mass digitalization, whatever, the entire travel chain with particular reference to women need is a good reference point, because then you cater to children, you cater to older adults, you cater to disabled people as well. And a rough ballpoint figure is women make 50% of the population. So, I mean, why not just take them into account? And we have a real good chance of promoting sustainable travel behavior if women's travel preferences are made the unit of analysis. Understanding the links between gender and transportation, how can we move forward, is given the current system, roles, jobs, and gender divisions, what are their current mobility needs? Now, this will be context specific. Each country will have its own plotting. So each country, region, city need to do this exercise. Division of labor in different sectors, what the current and future mobility needs. Now, even in most egalitarian societies like Scandinavia, there's a clear gender divide in employment sectors, clear. And why is it so? That's a different discussion. But if you don't look at these sectoral divide and their travel needs, you're going to make a lot of mistake, like we do in Norway. What kind of transportation policies and investment will ensure that accessibility of women increase? Are there systemic and systematic flaws responsible for gender blind policies? And very important, how do land use regulations or the lack of it, affect mobilities? And which kind of complementing or supplementing, new technologies are emerging? Just some quick examples. There was this gender budgeting done in Malmö, Sweden. Really easy calculation. If women were to adopt the travel patterns of today's men, the modal share of car would increase by 17%, CO2 emissions by 31%, and we will need 190 standard town square for parking. Now, these are the kind of numbers which are relatively easy to generate and then show it to your politicians and ask, okay, what next? But it's not done. Again, when you look at this picture, it's again a very typical Scandinavian picture. Can somebody tell me what is wrong with this from an inclusion perspective or from what I have been talking so far? Just a guess. No, the sidewalk it's a walking and cycling path. However, if you want to cross the road, you have to walk half an hour to cross this road, because it's just designed for cars. Like the even the thought of somebody would need to cross the road didn't emerge. And we have multiple residential areas like this, which are completely divided by road or railway tracks with no crossing. And it's a relatively easy infrastructure to provide. This is the kind of image which Scandinavian cities are going towards. But then again, it's very much concentrated in the center, the central area. And when you look at the residential prices of such areas, it's not inclusive whatsoever. It's highly, highly exclusive. So then there is another, discussion to be had, the merging of good mobility and housing and affordability. There's another example from gender impact assessment. This is a methodology from Lena Levin at VTI Sweden. And environmental impact assessment is mandatory. You cannot, implement a big project without undertaking environmental impact assessment. Gender impact assessment on paper and reports has been around for over 20 years, but it's not a mandatory assessment to be taken. And even in countries like Norway, Sweden, where gender equality is a prima facie, like major goal, this is not a part of the assessment strategies. You look at smart mobilities, when you look at the division between how men and women are uptaking smart mobilities, there's a huge divide. And smart mobility so far has facilitated age group up to 35 years, living in 1 to 2% households, above average formal education, above average income, and white men. And this is a standard exercise. And when you look at, this is for car sharing, which is a private car you rent on hourly basis and use. However, when you look at ride sharing, which is different from car sharing, it's more like a taxi-based system, then suddenly the uptake of women is higher because they're trip chaining, they have flexible trip. So when the government actually passes or supports an agenda of smart mobility, it is better to support these kind of approaches rather than car sharing. Very quickly, another exercise we did in accessibility in Oslo. So the red area shows accessibility by bicycles, normal bicycles, and in the next map to that, where it is a bigger red area, it is by e-bikes. And we did a very simple calculation. We linked cycling to the major high-speed public transport network, which is train and trams. And we saw how accessibility, really grew. So when you look at this entire discussion on e-bikes, so the combination of e-bike usage and e-bike integration into high-speed public transport system has the potential to shift commuting patterns, and particularly useful for women, because when you check where they are living and working, they're living and working on the outskirts of Oslo. When you look at the data because the data is good data is available in Norway. And then we did a very simple exercise of when docking stations were put up in Oslo for bike sharing schemes. So anyway, I can just scan. So the docking stations were put here. This is the center of Oslo for bike sharing. And this is a pattern around the world. They put it in the center because then bike sharing is not really seen as something part of mobility discussion or mobility chain. It is an advertisement thing because it was being funded by Clear Channel for advertisement. And then the locational decision was center. And the usage of bike sharing by women was relatively low. However, when we plotted where women are living and working, it's on the outskirts. And the moment these bike sharing docking stations came up outside, you see these thick black lines, the usage of bike sharing by women went quite high. So it's a locational decision, it's spatial decision, and these approaches should be more proactive than reactive, but they are not undertaken. Again, in pandemic, we saw severe divide on the lines of gender. Flexibility to work from home did not apply to women on average. The reduced commute burden also did not apply to women. Regained work-life balance did not apply to women. Slower pace of life did not apply to women. And this is a graph which we draw from BEST data, which is collecting public transport users data in Scandinavian countries, and we saw that across the topics of safety at stations, on board, regarding accidents, stress, there was a clear gender divide, and we are talking about the most advanced economies here. And because there was no caring agenda in place, the reason I'm telling you this is that because the caring agenda is not built, these things are, shoved under the rug and not really taken up beyond research, I would say. Some examples of careful implementations from Global South. The first two pictures are from Kenya and the 2/3 rule in Kenya, where, in all sectors, there has to be 2/3 rule. So 2/3 women have to be employed in the sector. It has led to an increase in uptake of female bus drivers and conductors. The second picture, this tuk-tuk, is from India. And this is a picture where the women in a village formed a self-help group, and they tapped into the Social Development Fund, bought a tuk-tuk, an electric tuk-tuk, trained themselves to drive, and then they're driving young girls to the city for education and health. And this is not prima facie a transport solution or transport funding. It's coming from social development. Then again, you have these maps, which is the safety mapping. This is from Safety Pin to plot safe and unsafe areas, where women are taken on a survey of the areas. They form groups, and then there is a list of 9 factors like lighting, safety, eyes on the street, and a list of 9 factors. And then, these are made into overlaid on top of each other through an index, and a safety score is generated. There are multiple approaches like this, which is found in the world. And yesterday, I think Jim mentioned that in Italy, 60,000 women participated in something similar, generated great data set, but the city did not take it forward. And so these kind of great initiatives die out if a caring agenda is not in place. And the issue of sexual harassment and harassment on streets and public transport, which very much affects the decision to access health, education, and opportunities, are not taken forward. There is one study from Delhi which showed quite nicely that how girls who were high achievers in high school actually went to low-level colleges, not the high-level colleges, because it was not safe to access the best colleges from where they lived. And that decision, it plots their entire life, what they will, what kind of education they will access next time, and and further, and their jobs and everything. So I think that caring agenda is very important. The last picture is it's from Gujarat, and where e-rickshaws are being launched. And as a part of that launching program, they are training female drivers. So there's a great opportunity here, in the electrification of transport sector to include the caring agenda. And I wrote these 2 reports for SCAP, and you're most welcome to look into it. There's also a set of guidelines provided at the end of both reports to how to, work with gender at this transition. When we talk about sustainability transitions, electrifications, how can you work with including women? Because there is a window of opportunity which needs to be tapped into. I did not use the caring word because I was not allowed to. It's a SCAP report. So, but what I'm trying to really promote is that the caring language needs to be expanded, broadened, and inserted in everything which we are doing. And then these are my favorite words, macro, meso, micro, because everything we do needs to be understood at 3 levels, plotted at 3 levels, and discussed at 3 levels. And there needs to be a clarity, which level are you discussing? So at macro, build a focus on care agenda and linkage to safe and secure public transport, walking, bicycling. Climate agenda is insufficient, and it's also inefficient in many ways. At the mesos, regional planning, urban planning policies, example, locational decisions. At the micro level, road designs, apps, public transport routes, timings, etc. And merging these is, you need to understand the gender needs, power structure, negotiation process. When you talk about transitions, digitalization, etc., what do they mean for women and different demographic groups? Do not treat the entire population as one. And what are the systematic financial benefits of framing these policies and strategies? Caring cities framework can demand further calculation and consideration. It can insist on cost-benefit analysis being modified. And we have cases in around the world where when this was done, like Asian Development Bank, the moment solar panels are a huge success in India, and Asian Development Banks was providing funding for it. The moment they put gender in the equation, the benefits were much, much greater than the losses. And then it was so putting gender in the equation can change your cost-benefit analysis. So do that. At the micro level, also very simple interventions like this. Scotland installs refill taps. Now, putting these refilling taps in the pedestrian zone, it's not a transport decision. It's actually a municipal decision, land use and infrastructure planning. So then if you have a caring agenda, it will be easy to pass these kind of interventions. And just a snippet, the first patent a woman ever took was to design a dress to cycle. Yes. And these kind of historic snippets is very important to link it with mobility and inclusive mobility. So my point is, what are the knowledge gaps? How can we look for other needs, attitude, perceptions, inventions, interventions, design strategies, which are hidden in plain sight? And now this was part one. This was the starter. I have, how much time do I have? I have 5 minutes. Wasn't it 9:30 to 10:30?
I know, but you need questions.
Okay, I'll use 10 minutes. No, not with me. It doesn't get boring. Anyway, so we did another exercise on sharing, and this is ingress, or a different ingress to Sharing City. What we wanted is, how do you talk about a sharing agenda where shared mobility and shared spaces are not two different things, but you bring it together. You always plan for shared spaces and shared mobility together in the designing of housing areas and policies. So this is a conceptual framework. And the methodology which we adopted was simply going to people and asking, when you have this kind of, approach, what is missing in your current living? And we drew a list of the kind of inside shared spaces people needed, outside shared spaces, and how can it be brought together. And we call this overlap or confluence resharing. We designed some prototypes of the kind of needs people had and how could it be included in the living areas. And then we did some mapping exercise of the newest living area in Oslo, which is Hovenbyen, a very new development area. We did the spatial mapping for accessibility to car sharing, bike sharing, etc., etc. We overlaid and we made an index to highlight which are the areas which are good, which are existing conditions for resharing, and which are lacking in conditions for resharing. So, and in the end, we created a dashboard. This is interactive dashboard. So I can share the link with you, or if you just Google reshare and dashboard, it will come up. So you can zoom in and zoom out of the entire Oslo city, and you can see which areas are fit for resharing, which are poorly fit, and the areas, for example, which are yellow, which are poorly fit and have high density, like population density, then that is the area where the municipality should be working into. We also did a lot of exercise with people, like this place is called Ombruke, which is recircular economy, promoting recircular economy. And it's located in one of the poorer parts of Oslo. So people donate their clothes and stuff. And then there are volunteers working in this shop, which sell it out for next to nothing, which is like half a pound for each item. So it's basically given out free. But over the years, it has been running for 3 years, and it has become a meeting point for people. It's a great center for meeting. But the place which you see, the area, the rooms, it's rented out for free right now by Ubus, which is the biggest development or residential development cooperative in Oslo. Now, if Ubus tomorrow shuts this down, it will be shut down because they cannot sustain to pay the rent or anything. So these kind of third spaces can also be defended if you have a stronger caring agenda. We did some other studies in a library in Holmlia, which is primarily non-Western, low-income immigrant communities living there. And we did some mapping exercises with them to understand, there is a focus on the transit-oriented development approach, but how do you integrate how people are, using the area into TOD planning is not really inbuilt right now. So we printed this map. You see, that's the map in blocks. And then we asked them to write it down. And there is this building called BUA, which is, again, a Oslo strategy for sharing things. So you can rent out your skis and your skates and skiing clothes, etc. from there. But then all of these kind of approaches, because there's a lack of caring agenda, it's ad hoc. It can be shut down tomorrow and lack of financing. So, yeah. And now the policy clashes. Very quick, 5 minutes and I'll close. Now, Norway thinks it's Adonis, when it comes to public transport. And they have created this zero growth vision and city packaging. This is the Norwegian policy approach. And zero growth vision means that all future traffic has to be absorbed on public transport, walking, and cycling. That's a clear policy approach. Based on that, funding is transferred to the 10 largest urban areas of Norway. So they have to monitor and see what's happening. However, so car restrictive policies are part of it, toll stations, parking restrictions, better public transport, walking and cycling policies. Now, these are at the larger level. However, today's central areas are primarily car-based, except Oslo. Entire Norwegian urban regions or rural regions is a car-based place. So the zero growth goal needs further defining. And I will very quickly show you an example of we did something. And you see, this is Askøya. This is a small municipality in Norway. And Norway is basically constitutes of these kind of small municipalities. Now, when you look at the percentage division of trips, what we see is that poor walking access to grocery shopping. So even though there is poor access to grocery shopping, of all the walking trips, 20% are being done for grocery shopping, even when it's poor access. So you see the stars are the grocery stores, and there are multiple areas, residential areas, where there's no store, right? And still 20% share suggests that people are more than willing to walk to grocery shopping, but forced to use the car because for every area, except the central areas, one can't access grocery shopping on foot. Now, caring cities can take these facts into account in land use planning, and which is not being given emphasis despite the existence of urban packages. So you have a policy framing, but you don't know how to work with it. So this is, again, another picture from Haugesund. It's another small municipality. You see that all the grocery stores are located in the center. They are clustered around major roads, and historically, it's car-based central areas. Norway is investing a huge amount of money, in building dedicated cycling lanes, right? So this is just to show you, like in this particular area, these are the cycling lanes which are coming up. And however, when you look at, this is a particular case, and I will close with this. So I want to just talk about it a little. You see, this is the grocery store here, the star over here, which we were analyzing. And we suggested that based on the walking and cycling paths, which are already in the plan, which are passed, this is the best location. People will walk and cycle to do their grocery shopping. However, this area is regulated for industry, and it's versus area regulated for high frequency visit grocery shops. So this did not get clearance from the municipality. You cannot, locate the grocery shop there. That was initially rejected. So basically, clustering is happening due to restricted land use planning and regulations. And how we reached at this location decision, we created index for attractiveness of the area as destination for walking and cycling trips, taking into account school, daycare, residential areas. And when you look at the issues like aging, time poverty, more walking and cycling approach, 15-minute city, etc., this grocery shop should have been passed, but it wasn't. So even with focus on walking and cycling, historic car-based structure is maintained. Billions are being spent on walking and cycling infrastructure, but not allowed to build because it will compete with the centers, the shopping centers. So the policies are working against each other. And there's a policy clash because there's no overarching framing of, which can, what can take you to the final decision. Now I'll wrap up. This is my last slide. And this bubble diagram shows you the topics which are being studied in Asia, in around the world, actually, for electrification of public transport. There is no mention of inclusion. There's no mention of the care agenda or female participation, training, the window of opportunity. And this is exactly the point. Like, if you don't have a care filter, we need to create these care markers, care filters, and care mapping, and also care calculators, cost savings, insert it into cost benefit analysis, and then do a care monitoring exercise. So for example, future research on electric buses will likely revolve around economic and environmental sustainability, energy management strategies, and fleet operation, disregarding social sustainability and inclusive electric public solutions, without these kind of care markers in place. So, from strategically scaring to strategically caring cities. Thank you very much. Yes, questions, please.
People have questions to ask Tanu? Anyone? Yeah, sorry, I can't see. Tanu, you'll have to do the questions. I'm seeing.
Yeah.
It's transport here. So yeah, thanks very much for a really interesting presentation. I mean, when you started, you went through a long list of models and labels, and so your framing of giving us this sort of framing area. What do you think it offers, maybe analytically, beyond what some of these existing concepts are trying to do? Because I think it's inclusivity, it's equity, it's everything.
Yeah, so for example, when you have safe school zones, right? A lot of cities are working with safe school zones and all. It is working. If you have the caring paradigm, it will be much easier to get it passed because it's a caring approach. You're making it safe because it will not pass through, or you can defend it through the environmental sustainability thing. Social sustainability is poorly understood and it's complex. But what is easy to catch? Care is an easy word to understand. And there are a lot of interventions which you can get past easily if you build a caring approach or a careful approach.
So it's difficult for policymakers to say.
Politicians.
Politicians would not say.
Yes. Okay. Yes. They can't say it. It's catching them. Yes, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. Sort of partly building on from what just was said, it's more a suggestion. I think you can be perhaps more clear in how you define care and actually go back to some of the literature on this. So you could go back to Jean Tronto, who talks about care as a species activity.
Yeah.
That is about everything kind of to build and maintain our world. Or Maria de la Bella Casa, who talks about maintenance and repair.
Yeah.
I think if you frame it like that, I think the analytical value becomes stronger and clearer to people who are not sort of familiar with the feminist literature on the topic, and for whom this is an obvious choice to make, and there can be no debate about this.
Yeah, I think I'll work on it in the paper, but it was already a very long presentation, so yeah, but thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Daniel?
Maybe in relation to your original framework, and this is more because I know there was no plan, but you said that the framing of the presentation was to show what's happening in the north, just in a way, looks a bit where the south is going. But have you come across any models from the south that center care more clearly into planning, not only into transport, but in general, that could be useful to learn from the north? So I think that's a direction that we go.
Both yes and no, because they never use the caring framework as such, but they are good examples. So it needs to be also collated and brought under the caring framework. So for example, I talked about yesterday is that the Bangladeshi garment sector, all the garment factories which provided bus to its workers, mostly female workers, their quality of life was remarkably different from women who didn't have access to these free bus services. So, and that's a caring policy. And because the government is not insisting that all garment factories have to provide bus, it's ad hoc. So there are multiple good examples and bad examples of what's happening, but and I will keep working on it. But my point is that if we use caring framework like caring cities instead of smart cities, there are a lot of good things which can be promoted and which we can argue with the government of why you should promote this than that. And making footpaths, for example, safe footpaths, is very much a caring approach. Yeah.
A great presentation, thank you very much. But you started off by saying that the caring approach should not be about just women, but a much broader approach.
Yeah.
And then you immediately dived into gender and gender auditing, which I know gender is not just about women, but you made it all about women. So I think you've got a bit of a conflict going on there in terms of you're arguing that the caring approach is much more all-encompassing than going down a gendered approach, and then you're going down a gendered approach. So I have a little bit of a worry about that. The other thing is that your caring approach assumes that politicians and policymakers do care. They care about people, they care about places, and they care about lower income people and poor people and women. My experience is they don't give a monkeys about those people, right? They would prefer to just forget about them. So I think that you have a much harder job in the global south to sell a caring agenda than you might in Norway, where people would feel a bit uncomfortable thinking that they didn't really care about people. I think it's a very Scandinavian framing that you've got there. Not sure they really adapt, right? So I think you need to scrutinise that a bit more.
Yeah.
And then finally, I'm not entirely sure. You keep going back to cost-benefit analysis and talking about more benefits coming. But at the end of the day, in transport, cost-benefit analysis is predominantly predicated on journey time savings. And journey time savings in the global south is not necessarily what should be striven for. It might be the most important thing might be safety. Or, so keeping cost-benefit analysis in the centre and using that as a way to calculate benefits and disbenefits, whether they're for a caring or smart city or whatever it is in itself problematic, I think, because you are still catering to get there faster, go further.
No, but okay, the first thing, gender was an ingress. It was just an ingress.
I don't know what an ingress is.
As a inlet into discussing.
Yeah, but because you've used that inlet instead of income, let's say.
Yeah, I could have used income.
Yeah, well, maybe that would have been
I could have income. But
gender.
Sharing, for example, it has nothing to do with gender. The sharing agenda, the circular city agenda, it's not to do with gender. The urban packaging, for example, and policy clashes, it has nothing to do with gender. And these are different inlets on how you can basically work more fluidly if you had a caring framework. That's what I'm saying. Okay. The second is cost-benefit analysis is not like a standard procedure. The kind of elements you put in your cost, the kind of elements you put in your benefits, it varies. So time savings is one element. But based on, for example, when you establish your traffic school safe zones, the cost-benefit analysis which you will do for that will be different. There will be no travel time saving there. But for all kind of major projects, cost-benefit analysis approach is undertaken. That is the established. I'm not in favor of it, but that is the established methodology. So what I'm saying is you really need to look into which elements are going into your costs and which elements are going into your benefits. You can take travel time saving out.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't, though, do we?
Yeah, but we can discuss it. Like, that's open for discussion.
So maybe that would be part of a caring economy to take journey time savings out of cost-benefit analysis and put other measures in.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if I can come in, and I do a lot of cost-benefit analysis. If we're talking about caring, I do think we need to also advocate to get away from cost-benefit analysis and do a multi-criteria analysis.
Yeah, but that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Cost-benefit analysis inherently is an economic calculation. We're putting a value on a alarm, for example, if road safety is part of that calculation, which is, and I do cost-benefit analysis as well. I also have clients that say, I want a cost-benefit analysis and not a multi-criteria analysis. But I do think in this environment, we should be advocating for multi-criteria analysis.
And that's completely fine with me. Like, put multi-criteria analysis. The reason why I use cost-benefit analysis because I see a lot of companies, a lot of governments still doing it. So one thing is to fight for multi-criteria, which is fine, but I want to work with what is there right now and insert this, the caring thing into it. Yes, Tanya.
I just want to complain, and I have nothing to say about cost-benefit analysis, but I want to disagree with Karen partly on the politician side because it's not entirely true. I mean, we have examples in which we have seen governments in the global south, and that's where my discussion was going to, that, for example, have popularized interventions such as care blocks, and that have
Such as
the care blocks.
care blocks, yeah.
So they have extended that into the money. There is a whole literature on different ways of caring that is coming from Latin America that is showing that policy will become differently from the south is possible. So, and in a way, I think we're in a moment in which there are many opportunities, such as the 50 clubs, such as 40, and you see a team of those who are also pushing an agenda in which the idea of the world-class city is changing a little bit. They're trying to sell for the mayors at the local level in agendas such as care. So it is perhaps less bleak than we might see it.
Yeah, and these 8 countries have caring laws. They have a legal framework on caring. Yeah. So governments are caring here in these 8 countries. There is legality to.
Even in urban planning.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. There's legal framework on caring, which I find fascinating. But I don't think it exists in Asia at all. Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, I just want to clear it, the multifactorial analysis and the cost-benefit analysis. When you drill down in multifactorial analysis, at the end, you still have to attach values to these factors. So at the end, cost-benefit, it is what you consider as the elements of the benefit and the elements, they are still lost. So I don't see much of them. But if because I seems to align with cost benefit, but multi-factor analysis we use, those factors are not neutral. So if maybe we speak of if there is a big difference about that. Miriam, I think about the multi-factor. Yeah.
So in multi-criteria analysis, you do not change. So you standardize, but not through money.
Yeah.
And that's the big difference. And I think when we care about life, for example. We don't care about the money that life would represent, because that's just metal or paper, whatever we have, or plastic nowadays.
Yeah, but my point is I'm open to whatever method works, but take the caring input into it. And then you will see the equation change.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think our argument is you cannot put the caring element into cost benefit analysis because monetarizes everything. And a lot of the things out of the caring agenda cannot be monetized.
I'll give you, no, that's not true. I'll give you a concrete example.
Monetize somebody's quality of life.
No, you're gonna monetize waiting time. If you have to wait a lot for the second bus to come, then your cost increases, your benefit lowers. So there are many, that's what I'm saying. We can go detail into one exercise and then discuss. Health, you can monetize health. And also the interaction between access to safe footpath and walking. You can monetize it. And
the cost of paying and
and it has been done. I don't remember off my head right now, But making public transport safe for women in UK would generate £186 million benefit. It has been done, and I'll share that link with you. It was a discussion on transport planning unit. Students and children and
So I do think there is some truth in both. We live in a world where cost-benefit analysis still trumps. That's the wrong word, right? Today, you find ways to include caring in cost-benefit analysis. It's something that will be a first step in including more caring and working towards your caring. I also think that if you ask me, what would you like to see tomorrow, is getting away from cost-benefit analysis and doing multiplication.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can't really take any more questions because we've come to the end of the session. And because we're online, obviously, then we can't really do that. So you can have a discussion with Tanu offline about cost-benefit analysis, and have a break now and go coffee. Thank you.
Thank you.